Mr. Nehru, I am extremely grateful to you for coming here, and I speak on behalf of us here and on behalf of the wider public who are watching us. I'm particularly grateful as I believe this is your very first appearance on television.
Yes, this is the first time I'm facing this ordeal. In fact, I know very little about television, except what I've heard about it.
Well, I would like to introduce to you, if I may, the people who are, I hope, going to make this not such a bad ordeal after all. Sitting on my left is Kingsley Martin, the editor of the New Statesman and Nation, and beyond him is H.V. Hodson, the editor of the Sunday Times, and at the end, to ask the first question, is Donald McLaughlin, the foreign editor of The Economist.
Prime Minister, when you return to India, people will be asking you what you thought of the coronation. What are you going to tell them?
Well, I'll have to tell them a great deal, but principally that it's very impressive in many ways. The most impressive thing to me was, apart from it being a great spectacle, were the crowds here and the way they behaved. And one begins to like more and more the London crowds and their fortitude in inclement weather and their insistence on enjoying themselves whatever might happen.
But is there going to be no criticism in India of your having come to the coronation?
There was when I came, and there will be no doubt when I go back. But I don't think it will amount to much.
Mr. Nehru, we all understand very well indeed why India decided to be a republic within the Commonwealth. What I think is a remarkable thing is why there is so little resentment in India towards the British in view of our past history. It seems to us that India is a most wonderfully magnanimous country. Can you explain this remarkable phenomenon of forgiveness?
Well, partly we don't, I suppose, hate for long or intensively. But chiefly, I think, because the background that Mr. Gandhi gave us during all these past decades.
After all, you were in prison yourself 16 years, and you don't seem to have any resentment about it at all. We might almost be popular people in India. Astonishing thing, really.
I think it's a good thing for a person to go to prison for a short while.
And to be Prime Minister for 7 years. I was going to ask, looking back on those 7 years and remembering all the hopes that were expressed at the time when India gained her independence, do you feel that they have been years of satisfactory achievement, or have you disappointments, Prime Minister?
Both. I think we have certainly achieved much, and there has also been a lack of achievement. We haven't done what we wanted to do, so it's both satisfactory and unsatisfactory.
Could you elaborate that a little? What have you been disappointed in?
It's rather a big question. There are so many things in India.
Can I give you a lead about democracy and the progress of political democracy in India?
Well, generally speaking, I would say that politically we had advanced. The unity of the country, we've put an end to all the old princely states. We've had these general elections which were remarkable on a tremendous scale, and we've built up a good democratic structure. What troubles us chiefly is the economic side. I believe we have made progress. I should like the progress to be much faster.
May I ask, Mr. Prime Minister, whether or not you consider that the economic progress has been fast enough to keep up with the very sharp increase in population? In other words, is there any possibility that India will be more or less self-sufficient in food in the course of time?
There's not only a possibility, but I should imagine a certainty, and not in the course of time, but in the near future, in the course of a year or two.
On the religious side, that's a very satisfactory, sounds to me an optimistic statement. But on the main trouble there's been in India, I'll put it this way, you have said in the past that you wanted to make India a secular democracy in which minorities could live at peace. Now, do you feel, I regard that as one of your principal objectives, do you feel that you have achieved that religious fanaticism is gone down now? Do you feel on top of that problem?
Well, we are on top of it, but I can't say that we've put an end to it. and we have to face it even now often enough. But the last elections showed that the Indian people generally don't like it.
And caste?
There's plenty of caste which interferes with politics in the sense of, in elections, a person may choose to vote for his caste man, in that sense. They're still there, unfortunately. We try to fight it.
Tell you, Prime Minister, what I think is worrying many of us in a way about your democratic system, which is a matter of great admiration in this country, and that is that there doesn't seem to be an opposition, that there doesn't seem to be someone playing the leader of the opposition to you. And what do you feel, if I may ask an impertinent question, what do you feel will happen if you were to retire? Do you have a successor in Congress? Do you have a successor in the opposition?
Now, what do you mean by that there is no opposition? In our parliament, in the House of the People, there are 500 members. Well, we are 350. The opposition consists of 150. It is true that that opposition is split up in 4 or more parties. There is no one major opposition. We haven't got the two-party system. We can't impose that. It develops or not.
Would you welcome it, Prime Minister?
Yes, on the whole, if there's a big enough party which thinks in terms of office, we'd welcome it. Because otherwise these opposition parties become totally irresponsible. They have no hope of office, so they can say and do just what they like. But there is an opposition, and a very good opposition, both in Parliament and outside. We have continually to face it.
Do I understand you're right, Prime Minister, that what you regard as the big thing in Asia, and for that matter now in Africa, is the growth of a great national feeling, and that, as I understand, interpret speeches of yours, what you think is important is the growth of this national feeling and the fear that communism will make use of that. Would you say something about that?
Well, you see, I think in the perspective of history, one of the biggest things that has happened and is happening is this awakening or upsurge in Asia and to some extent in Africa. It's a tremendous thing. It takes different, it develops differently in different parts of Asia. But it has upset completely the old order. In China it has gone one way, in India another way. We arrived at a peaceful settlement with Britain. In Burma, it's Southeast Asia, everywhere it has a different face. But the main thing is this enormous upsurge. In a sense, after 300 or 400 years of, well, more or less European domination, Asia is coming into its own, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. And one has to understand that, appreciate it, understand it, and not merely get angry at it or dislike it. Of course, to some extent, in a different way, the same applies to Africa.
But Prime Minister, this raises a difficult problem. At the United Nations, I think it's right to say, India and other Asian nations have from time to time expressed very strong views about British and other European policies in Africa. Do you think by doing that you assist race relations or make them more bitter?
Well, I don't remember that we have said much about British policies in Africa. We have said a great deal, in the United Nations I mean, we have said a great deal about the situation in South Africa.
And in North Africa, in French North Africa.
Yes, and in Morocco and Tunisia.
Do you think that helps the French to solve their problems with the Africans?
That's a curious question.
The French don't think so.
Well, I think it's a curious question. My being told that you must not say anything when evil is happening, lest the evil may become worse. But I think, as a matter of fact, since by some circumstance I became Prime Minister of India, I have to hold myself in check all the time as to what I say. Otherwise I'd shout out from the housetops what is happening all over the world and in Africa, north, south and east. I wouldn't remain as quiet as I do now.
Prime Minister, you've had one problem for some years which has tested the ability to compromise. May I ask whether the assistance of the United Nations in the difficulties between Pakistan and India have on the whole been helpful?
I'm afraid not.
The United Nations has not helped.
It has not proved helpful with all the best will in the world. I think because in the nature of things these problems are more easily dealt with directly then through third parties.
Isn't it in that case partly due to the fact that both sides in the beginning of the Kashmir dispute, so to speak, staked out a legal claim for the whole of the prize, and that neither really believed that they could ever have the whole? That's to say, the situation is actually, to some extent, a fait accompli, with Pakistan in the north and Jammu in Indian hands. There must be some sort of a compromise, mustn't
But you
there?
must remember, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you must remember that the initial reason for its going to the United Nations was a very simple issue.
Yes.
That is Pakistan's invasion. That was the issue. I accept what you say, that if you look at the question as a whole, it is a complicated issue
Yeah.
and not easily disposed of by a simple formula.